Morning, and welcome to the Evolve to Win Facebook Live show with Heather, and Paul.
Happy Monday. How are you this morning? All right, so it's Monday, the week before everybody comes into town, kids are out of school, and guess who we're waiting
We're gonna have
for
a
today?
great Christmas.
Guess who's coming in today?
Who's coming in?
Who's coming in today?
Yo.
Yeah.
Yobi's coming in.
So we, Paul and I, a couple of years ago, took on a foreign exchange student from Japan. He was our first exchange student, and he is flying in for Christmas. So we're so excited to pick him up from the airport this evening and welcome him in. And today, this Facebook Live show is on why goal setting may be a waste of your time.
How could it be a waste of your time, Heather?
I know, it's so incongruent with who we are, right? I'll tell you why it can be a real waste of time. It's a waste of time if you're not following the right steps. And the reality is most of you are not following the right steps, at least consistently. So what we know for certain is that everyone who's achieved any level of success has done so because they've gotten clarity on what they're after. And yet, most people really don't know what that is. So if you're coming off of 2017 and celebrating a fantastic year, we want to celebrate right there with you. And we're going to kind of talk you through something that we started up about, what has it been, 11 years now? About 11 years ago, we started this ritual, this tradition that is completely outside of Christmas or the holidays. But it's a year-end tradition that is seriously, I think, the best thing that we have put into our lives and our business.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so we're talking right now about why goal setting can be a waste of time. And it's only a waste of time if you don't go through the right steps. If you don't go through the right steps, then you're not going to end up with the right goals, right? And I think it's critical that we make this point and that you get this point. Most people do not set goals that are compelling enough. They're not worthy of their time, their effort, their energy, their passion. So if you don't have goals out there right now that are so compelling for you that you are excited to get up in the morning and go after it, if it doesn't excite you, if it doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough for you. So why bother? Because you're going to just set a goal that's going to happen anyway. And why even spend the time?
I've totally, if there's somebody who I never was excited about setting goals because my way of being around goal setting was, well, I'm going to put it out there and maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. Most likely I'm not going to achieve it. And then I'm not going to feel good about myself.
So you don't want to set yourself up for failure.
Exactly.
We hear that, right?
Yeah,
it's one of the big reasons why people won't set goals. Like, I don't want to put it out there and just set myself up for failure. So let's just play it safe and get whatever we're going to get anyway.
Yeah, and I also think of goal setting as very logical, very analytical, very sit down, you do this plan, figure out what you want to have, and it's kind of not fun.
No, that would be boring.
Yeah, and so, what you said about creating those compelling goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it too is, if you don't do a little pre-work prior to that session, mm-hmm. it can become, well, you're just writing things down just because you got to get it done before the time finishes your goal setting plan, right?
Which is boring, which is really boring. And I think that's why goal setting in general, you might have turned this on, heard the word goal and clicked it off. So thank you for sticking with us, for those of you who are still with us.
But it is about waste. I also look at it as wasting time. So if I'm going to go and do this, why would I want to do it if I'm not going to, if I'm setting myself up for failure, if I'm not going to have the goals that I really want?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of,
or if I don't think I'm going to achieve them.
I've been so resistant to goal setting in the past, up until when we started doing the first step, which I think is the absolute most important step in any goal setting. It's going to set you up. It's going to open up the door. It's going to open up your mind. And you're going to be working out of the right side of your mind.
Yes. Yeah. Right brain. This is we're starting off with actually something really, really fun, and it's totally right brain. So it's not the normal, typical, logical, write down your goal from A to B and the action steps to get there. That comes later. That comes only after you're truly inspired and excited about goal setting. But I want to talk for a minute about why this matters to you, right?
Yeah.
Why is it important to have goals out there? My favorite definition of success comes from Earl Nightingale, back a long, long time ago, Earl Nightingale was like, the father of personal development. He was the first one to do recorded personal growth and, make it a platinum album.
Yeah.
Earl Nightingale says this: the definition of success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal.
Yeah. All right.
It's either ideal or goal. So let's say that
we
one more time.
We got
progressive. Yeah,
we didn't practice.
No, we didn't practice that at all. Oh my gosh, let's harmonize. The progressive realization of a worthy goal, or you might hear him say worthy ideal. And that's
so what does that mean? What does
logical.
that mean? Because when I heard it for the first time, I was like, well, I don't really get it.
Okay.
What does that mean? So tell me.
All right. So when you think about success, I used to think about success as, when you accomplish something, right? When you accomplish something, then you're successful. And yet that's not what Earl Nightingale says. You see, most people, if you ask them what they think success is about, most people will give you completely different answers, right? They'll be all over the board. You ask 100 people, you'll probably get at least 99 different answers.
Yep.
But success is actually pretty clear cut, is that if it's not about achieving the goal, it's about being in progressive realization towards that goal. But he doesn't just call it any goal, it's a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. And for today, we just want to focus on the end part of that statement, the worthy goal. How do you create a goal out there that you're actually super excited about? We are here to evolve. We're here to grow. If you want to have more money in your business, if you want to have better relationships, if you want to have a healthier lifestyle, if you want to grow spiritually, personally, professionally, we're here for growth. And I honestly don't believe that you can be happy if you're not in a place of growth. So we are a total stand for growth. And we're really committed to this for you. Part of the reason for the Evolve to Win show, right? It's our platform. It's what we stand for. So how do you get to this place of finding that worthy ideal? If you don't have a worthy ideal in front of you, you might experience some symptoms that look like this. You might feel like you're going through the motions. Like you're just going through every day and it kind of feels like the day before. So you might feel this level of
I've felt like that before.
Apathy. You just, you're just not excited. Yeah. Right. And
I think everybody goes through that at one time or another.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have a worthy goal in front of you, you're going to be there every day.
But the way I think about that definition is I think that we set goals as A, and then B is achieving the goal, right? Mm-hmm. But what Earl Nightingale is saying is that everything in between, as you're working towards that goal, you're climbing up the mountain to hit that goal, that is where you're really living. That's where you're inspired. That's where you come to life. But it has to be that worthy goal.
Well, it's kind of like if you haven't been to the gym in a while and you actually drag yourself in and you get into that gym, how good it feels. Like you don't look any different whatsoever. You don't even really feel any different. You might even feel worse than when you went in at first, but you feel good. You feel good mentally. You feel good emotionally. You have that sense of accomplishment, that sense of okay, I've done this. I've kept my word. A lot of it has to do with being in integrity and keeping your word and making that progress. Mm-hmm. So we all know how that feels. And it's really funny that it's so hard, at least for me, to get into the gym when I know that I feel awesome every time. I mean, I just started going back again a week ago. I took a couple weeks off. And when I went back in, I felt so good. That progressive realization of a worthy ideal, in this case, just health and fitness.
Right.
It's interesting. The reality of goal setting is we're at that time of year right now, right? At the end of the year, that's when most people, if ever, actually think about setting goals. And they do it typically in the form of resolutions. Mm-hmm. Now, most people, almost everyone we work with has some level of goal setting going on, at least on the business side. But very, very few actually have compelling goals outside of their business goals. And so we want to talk about the whole picture, but let's just jump right in and talk about what that first step is that most people are not doing. And if you're doing it at all, or if you've done it ever, you're probably not doing it consistently. What is that first step?
The first step is just acknowledging and, first is just acknowledging the work that you've done throughout the entire year.
Okay.
Because I think that's just talking about wins. Most of us do not acknowledge ourselves for all the wins that we've had throughout the year.
And when
We're
you
so
say
easily-
most,
Yeah.
we're talking about 95% plus of the population will not stop long enough to actually reflect upon the year and acknowledge those wins. Most people will not do it. And if they do it at all, they glaze over it. So we're going to share with you an exercise that we came up with that seriously is like something we look forward to every single year. And by the way, as we frame this, I want you to think about doing this, not just for you, because some of you will not take the time for you. We know who you are. But I want you to think about this as one of the most amazing family relational experiences that you could possibly have. So whether...
And this is not work. This is actually fun.
No, it's
like
fun.
You can
It's
actually
right.
turn this into a fun thing. And if you want to have a drink while you're doing it, you can do that as well. I mean, it's wide open.
Yeah. So
there's only one thing that you need to do.
The one thing you need to do is just make the time, grab someone close to you. I don't care if it's your spouse, your kids, or maybe a whole room full of people. We're actually going to do this on Saturday this year when we have, like 6 people coming into town. You will be with us and our cousins are coming in.
Yeah.
So we're going to sit down on Saturday and we're going to do it together as a group exercise. And here's what you do. You start off with, well, let's just describe our very first one we ever did. Okay, 11 years ago. Paul and I just decided that we were going to take a day and just go over and acknowledge all the different things that we had accomplished in a year. What had we experienced? What had we done? What were our wins? What obstacles did we overcome? It's this kind of conversation. So all we did is we got a notebook. Each of us got a notebook. We had our own. And we decided to go to the beach, which was not something we did that often. And quite frankly, we were working so hard that year, I'm not sure we'd even been to the beach. So we go down to the beach with our little notepads and we're like, okay, start writing. And so literally you're sitting there and you're like, okay, what did I accomplish? And what happened for me immediately is my left brain kicked in like, well, you didn't really do that much this year. What are you celebrating? You've got a lot more work to do. You're not where you wanted to be. Like all of this chatter came in about, me kind of beating myself up, which is not far from the norm back then, right? So I'm trying to come up with and just, stay positive, coming up with the things that we accomplished this year. And what's really interesting is there were a couple that came up pretty quickly. And I think you and I had the same ones initially. So there were a couple of things like, we had won an award with our old franchise action coach, and we had hit certain milestones in our business. And even if it wasn't
some of the obvious ones.
Yeah, it wasn't where I wanted to be, it was still some serious milestones and growth. And so after writing the first few that were obvious, then I wanted to stop because I kind of thought I was done. But we had set a certain kind of rule where we were going to do this. We weren't going to talk. This is a alone time exercise where you just sit and you write and write and write as many things as you can come up with. And it's not just the big major accomplishments. It's any little win, any little growth, any obstacle overcome. And what was great was I just started going through in my mind the calendar and what we had done that year and who we got to spend time with.
And I think that's a great point, is we were able to go through the calendar, and that really gets you to think about, because you forget of so many different things that go on throughout the year. But if you have your calendar and you're able to look at that, it makes a massive difference to really identify, wow, I did that back in December. I did that, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, now we have social media too. I mean, the first part of the drill, we didn't have our cell phones. We had no technology. In fact, I don't even think we had smartphones back then. We didn't. So we were kind of on our own with our notebooks, but I went through my calendar mentally at that state. If we were to give you a step-by-step for how to do this, I would have you start just how we did that first year with just a pad of paper and a pen. Just start there, and we'll get to some of the other, devices you can use that will help you. But do you remember what happened? After we started going, we filled up pages, literally pages. And I stopped worrying about whether what I was writing down was really, was that a big enough deal to celebrate? Everything is a big enough deal. Every little bit of growth, every obstacle overcome is something to celebrate. So what happened was ultimately my left brain that was saying, you didn't do that much, or you're not where you want to be. It was really more like you're not where you want to be.
Right.
It started to subside a little bit. It started to shut down, and I just started flowing, and everything I came up with would remind me of another thing and another thing, another thing.
Yeah.
And I had multiple pages. You had multiple pages. And then, so the most.
And I'm really tough on myself too.
You are as hard on yourself.
Yeah.
As
but it is when I butt it
know.
up against like, okay, I don't have any more. And then kind of the floodgates opened after that. Right.
And I think the reason the floodgates open is we kept our word to each other and we didn't communicate. We sat there in silence without writing and just forced ourselves to keep thinking, right? Because if we had started talking, exercise would have been over. So I can't remember exactly how many minutes we gave ourselves. Let's say 15 minutes. I'm going to say it was right around there, somewhere around 10 or 15. And believe it or not, after 2 minutes, you're like, oh my gosh, how could I possibly go on for 10 or 15 minutes? And I want you to think about even just writing down the things that you're grateful for in that moment, because as you start writing the things, the people that you're grateful for, it's going to remind you of an event from the year and something that you did together and something that was impactful. How you impacted someone else's life or how someone impacted your life, the moments that you shared together, all of those things are worthy of celebration. They're wins. There's something to acknowledge.
So why do you do this?
Why do I do it? Oh my gosh. When you think about figuring out, so where do I want to go for next year?
Yeah.
I think this reflection moment, because I really think of it, it's a reflection moment. It's the time for the two of us to get together and to reflect. I think that starting with that reflection and remembering and being grateful for all that you've accomplished puts you in that place of feeling a little bit powerful, right? It puts you in that place of feeling like, okay, look how much I did. I thought I did nothing this year, and I just filled up pages and pages of interactions and accomplishments and achievements and wins, obstacles overcome that have helped me to grow. And what could this look like next year? So I think it just begins to get you in that way of thinking, in that process, because I think it's all a process. And one thing we know is that most people spend more time planning their annual vacation than they do planning their life and their business. And so this is a step in the process that most people ignore. Like, we all go through life and experience it, but very, very few people will go through and reflect and gain insight and acknowledge and celebrate all the wonderful things, right?
Yeah, and I also think that by going through that process, it opens up a door. So it opens up this door and opens up yourself for really starting to look at next year. So having that gratitude, having the acknowledgement, those are two huge parts that the majority of us don't do enough of.
Well,
right?
we don't usually allow ourselves to feel that. I mean, how many of you have over the years been taught not to celebrate yourself or not to acknowledge your own wins, to be humble? Well, this is not about humility. Gosh, you can be such a humble person. You can have so much humility, and it is perfectly okay. In fact, it's encouraged to acknowledge yourself for the great things that you've accomplished. And I know that 80% of people, 80%, will not acknowledge themselves, that they're so hard on themselves. They beat themselves up for the littlest things. And so here's a quiz for you to help you figure out where you stand, whether you beat yourself up or whether you're, really good at acknowledging what you do. If you have 10 things to do in a day, let's say that you do 9 of them really well, but there's just the one thing that you either didn't get done or you've screwed it up. So let's say you screwed it up. Do you at the end of the day, like literally high five me. I got 9 of my 10 things done. I rocked. You do that? Or do you dwell on that 10th that you messed up? Do you sit there and worry like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I messed that up. And that was a big deal. And what am I going to do? And gosh, I can't believe I made that mistake. And sometimes even stay up at night if it's a big enough number 10. Well, the reality is most of the people we work with, and the people we work with are really successful too, right? They will over amplify what they perceive as something that they did wrong. Over amplify, not just give it the amount of energy it deserves, but they'll make it bigger and they'll dwell on it. So why shouldn't we, at least this once per year? I mean, I recommend that it's done all throughout the day, every day. That's for another time. But at least at the end of the year, how about really putting the spotlight on, the focus on all those things that were great? I mean, think about what the impact is. If you're not acknowledging yourself for the good things that happen in your world, what's the impact?
Well, it's
How do you feel? How do you feel
like
if you don't do that?
You don't feel good. You feel like you maybe haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve. There's just a sense of maybe lack of self-worth, just not feeling good in general.
Yeah. And I think many people accomplish things all day long. You've had an amazing year. You have grown this year. You have grown this year. And the question is, have you acknowledged that growth? And for some of you, you are really celebrating an awesome year, but there are others who are saying, I can't wait until 2017 is over. I can't wait to start 2018 because I had a really, really tough year this year. And maybe you faced some of the worst obstacles that you've encountered ever before. But even then, even in those really, really tough years, you still have things to celebrate. You still have everything else around you to be grateful for. And so take whatever's happened for this year, good and bad, even all the obstacles, and start to acknowledge, so what has come from them? So what was a big obstacle for you this year?
A big obstacle or a big win?
I'm going to ask obstacle right now. What did I ask? Obstacle.
So a big obstacle.
He wants to talk about wins.
I think it's just, growing our business in general. We hired on a media company and being a part of these, I've talked about this before with the Facebook Lives and things like that. So that was a big obstacle for me. Yeah.
Okay. So when you put yourself in this place of growth, it feels uncomfortable. You feel anxious. You want to quit at times. You actually did quit at one point and came back. I've wanted to quit. I've wanted to quit several times and why are we doing this? But to be able to fight through that and stay persistent, I would think is a huge win. So that may not have come up automatically because you don't necessarily think about the obstacles as providing that win. But that's why I think one of the questions you ask is, what are the obstacles that I faced this year? In years past, we've faced obstacles where we've lost people in our lives who were really important for us. And it's hard not to just think about that with sorrow, but looking at the time that we got to spend with them and what the impact was they had on our lives and we had on theirs. So what about a win? What's one of your biggest wins for this year?
I think one of the big wins, we had Bailey, who was living with us, our goddaughter. And
hey, Bailey, if you're listening.
Yeah, and she had started her massage business. And so we really helped her as a brand new entrepreneur to be able to help her build her business, put in place the foundation, the systems and tools that she needs. And she's been rocking it. She really has been rocking it.
And she is an amazing massage therapist, by the way. But oh my gosh, to watch this young woman just soak it up. And, we've really taken the time to pour into her and help her with everything from her business plan, her marketing plan, her financial setup, all the way through to how she's talking with her customers and delivering her service and getting the repeat business. And she is, oh my gosh, you look at where she is compared with most people her age. It's amazing. So that's a huge win.
So those are wins. But I think to wrap it up, right? So to wrap this up, it's
well, we'll wrap this up, but there's one piece that we left out. So we made that list, that handwritten list, right? And we did that for 15 or 20 minutes. So guys, we're not talking about taking a full day out. We're not talking about an exercise that's so difficult that you can't do it. We're talking about truly just taking 15 minutes or so and writing until you can't write anymore, and not talking. Don't interrupt yourselves, but just keep writing and writing. And what we did after that was probably the most fun. Was then we sat down together and we went through our lists, and then we just had conversations and we laughed and we shared, and we created a moment. And this is where I think for you and for your family, it is seriously, it's going to be a moment that you'll never forget, because you're going to be talking about things that you don't usually talk about. You're going to be sharing and engaging and celebrating those people in your world in a way that is not typical, round the table conversation. So we got to share with each other, here's what was awesome, and do you remember this, and when we did this, and in each instance, we acknowledged each other as well as acknowledging ourselves. So it was such an amazing opportunity to really share that together. So that's why I think this is probably the best gift that you could give this holiday season, is to take that time with each other. Just aside from all of the crazy, hustle and bustle of this time of year. I know it can get really, really stressful, but those moments are so priceless.
Yeah.
You'll never forget it.
So the reason why goal setting can be a waste of your time is if you don't use this reflection, this time to really acknowledge, be grateful for the things that you had, and acknowledge all of the wins that you've had throughout the year. It doesn't, what happens is it doesn't leave you open for the possibilities for next year.
That's right. And so if your goal setting is not something you look forward to, if it feels way too mechanical, then my guess is you either are not doing this step or maybe you forget to do this step. Mm-hmm. But this is the warm up. We haven't really even gotten into the next step. There's more, right? But this is the warm up to get you thinking about what did we accomplish this year? Because it's the best way to go into the conversations then about what do we want for next year. It was super great to have you tune in. Thank you so much. What does Joe say? Can you read that? I can't read it.
He says, question for you. Do you feel that some people set goals that are too lofty or unattainable, and that is why they fail? I see that happen a lot.
Yes.
As much as people who set goals that are too easy to achieve.
Okay, good. So thanks for asking that, Joe. When we get into a conversation more related to the specifics of goal setting, we'll absolutely talk about how do you set goals that are realistic enough, because if you're always setting goals, if you're right now making like $50,000 and you set a goal to make $1 million, that might be so far out of your consciousness that you really, really struggle with, how am I going to get there? Is it doable? Sure, it's doable, but yet it's such a stretch. So how often do we find that when people use the step-by-step process that we've been working with for years, we don't find challenges with setting goals that are too far out of reach. We also, though, don't find challenges with people not setting goals that are high enough or compelling enough. Mm-hmm. So I think all of it, to sum up, Joe, anytime you're setting a goal that's either so far out of reach or just not big enough, it's because you're not doing these first few steps and really getting yourself clear on what you want and why you want it. And yet, I think that the opportunity is amazing. So people who have never set goals before and they try it for the first time, they may not get it exactly right, but they're probably going to grow in the process, right? So even if they don't get that lofty goal, they're going to get somewhere probably better than they would have gone had they not set that goal.
And that goes back to the progression.
Yeah, progressive realization. Right. So Thank you so much for that question. And thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. If you can catch us every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And
is next Monday Monday Christmas? Is that right? I think it is. Well, anyhow.
Well, whatever it is, we're still going to be on at 11:30 a.m. Yeah. We might be in our Christmas pajamas with our family all around, and there'll be a bunch of kids running around, but we will still be here with you. So
thank you so much for joining us on the Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul, and I hope you have a fantastic day and a great rest of your week.
And please feel free to connect with us on social media. Leave us a comment. If you have any questions about this, we'll still interact, and you can always find us at heatherchristie.com.
And if you know anybody that would like to hear this, just please share it with that person. Take care now.